Perfect. Okay, cool. So let me do that again. Hello, everybody. My name is Jedidah. You are welcome to our pro-positive mental health conversations on this wonderful Thursday, the 9th of March. And we are so excited to be here. We are always looking forward to these moments because it's a safe space for us to share what our day has been like, to share our experiences with one another, to encourage, to give each other courage as well, to give each other hope, and to show each other that it is possible. You know, it is possible to deal with mental health and see hope at the end of it. These mental health conversations are powered by pro-positive innovators, and we are all about positivity in a world where there is so much darkness, there's so much discouragement, and there's so much for us to be down about. We have found that we can always find something positive, a silver lining in it all. And so as pro-positive innovators, we are also about innovating better versions of ourselves. And we do that by sharing our stories and our experiences in the hope that somebody else will be encouraged, somebody else will be strengthened, and somebody else will see that it is possible to live, you know, with mental health and overcome. It is a journey, it is not a destination. You are all welcome. I see Darcia is joining us. Monene is joining us. We have Sean joining us today. You are all welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. So we have our wonderful guest today. Her name is Lethabo Malobola, and we are so grateful to have her here. And we can't wait to hear from her. Lethabo is a mother and a wife. She is an entrepreneur. She is a career and personal development consultant. She is a talent acquisition specialist. That's quite a mouthful. But above all of that, she's also a speaker and a mental health activist. She's also the founder of Creative Talent rather. So Lethabo, we are so glad and so honored to have you here. And thank you once again for saying yes to being our guest for today. So Lethabo, you are welcome. Please do introduce yourself as we get into the conversation.
So it's a reintroduction because I believe you already introduced me. But yes, I mean, you have done all the introduction. Everything else would just be repetitive. I am Lethabo, and I am grateful to be invited to this platform to share, to converse essentially with everyone about this uncomfortable but much needed conversation.
Thank you so much, Lethabo, for that, and you are welcome. So Lethabo, we will hand it over to you. Please do share with us. You know, it is in your bio, and I have mentioned that you are a mental health activist. So share with us, what has your journey been with mental health, and how did you get, you know, to owning that title of being a mental health activist?
Okay, so why I decided to be an activist of mental health is because, first of all, I'm Black, and in the Black community, you cannot say I'm mentally ill without saying I'm crazy, or without sounding like you're saying I'm crazy. So it became clear to me that communicating the clarity of I am mentally ill, but I'm not crazy, was a need. So I thought, okay, I can help other people understand that, okay, maybe we are a little bit crazy, but so is everyone else in the world. So you are not crazy, even if you have a certain mental illness. Not everything that's actually crazy is a very vast word to use, but in the Black community, that would mean you are not aware of your actions, you are not aware of your sanity, you are not aware of your surroundings. That means, you know, that crazy in a like very twisted way. So I decided that I need to rid myself of the shame of being called or being known as crazy if I say think I might be mentally ill, and also offer support for those who are looking for support. Because the thing with this condition is that it's a very lonely place, because you don't know who to talk to at any given time about any feeling that you have or any question that you have, because you don't want to sound like you have victim mentality, because also we're supposed to be in Bogoto, right? So you don't want to have victim mentality and not be in Bogoto, and you don't want to sound crazy either. So we are on thin ice all the time when we decide who we want to talk to about our feelings. So I thought I want to be that safe space for somebody else. So that's how I decided that I want to go ahead and do this.
And that is so empowering. That is so empowering, you know, just with the bit that you have shared with us so much. It is so empowering to get to a place where you are owning your journey. You are owning your truth to say, look, I am not trying to be anything other than what I am and who I am. I do struggle. You get what I mean? And like you mentioned, in our Black community as women, we stay having to be strong. You know, you have to keep it together. You cannot be seen breaking. You cannot be seen weak at any point, because then you are deemed to be less of a woman than who you are. And so I hear you, Lethabo, and we are so grateful that you decided to own that, because people do need a safe space. And so with that said, Lethabo, what has been your journey? Like, how did you get, you know, to discovering or knowing that, look, I am struggling with mental illness, or what brought it about? What, you know, I don't know how to put it without say triggered, or what got you on that journey of, look, I need help. I'm gonna seek help. This is what I need to do, and so on.
In all honesty, it was education for me. It was education, because I, funny enough, have always known that something was wrong with me, because I, from a very young age, as young as I can remember, suffered from self-esteem issues. I suffered from unexplained sadness. I suffered from loneliness and feeling unwanted, and thoughts of self-harm and all of that. And even at a young age, I knew that couldn't be normal, but I didn't know what to deem it as. And moreover, I didn't know who to talk to about it. So what became evident to me was that I would have to deal with it in silence, which is what I did. With me, it started at a so let me tell you a story. I'm gonna put it in a story. So my story is that I grew up in a typical Black family where corporal punishment was the number one go-to. So because I am a very strong-willed person, I was a strong-willed child, which meant I was resistant to a lot of command that I did not understand. Oh, I think something happened. Hello?
I'm sorry.
Did we lose connection? Am I still audible?
You are audible. I'm so sorry,
Okay.
everybody. We apologize for that. Okay, she's back. I think she had network issues.
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay.
You may proceed, Lethabo.
Yeah. So I grew up, like I said, in a typically in a typical Black home, and I was a very resistant child. So I ended up being beaten and punished a lot as a result, because I was outspoken, and I did question a lot of things. So to my mother, it came across as disrespectful. So I spent a lot of time in isolation. Her way of punishing me was locking me in a room, which was empty most of the time, and had no toys, nothing to write on, nothing to play with. And I would spend hours and sometimes days in it. And additionally, I would be beaten. Like, you know, when we were growing up, you'd be beaten with props like a belt, a stick, a wooden spoon, anything that's literally. And sometimes I would even be, sometimes I would be put in a situation where I have to pick my own prop that I was going to be beaten with, which was an additional trauma. So anyway, so I think at that age, I started to figure that I'm a problem. I figured that I am a problem because I'm one of three children. I'm the middle child, and my other sisters didn't get beaten or punished as much as I was. So in my mind, in my infant mind, I thought, okay, that means that I'm the problem, right? So I grew up knowing this. I became a teenager, and the resistance didn't change, and neither did the beatings or the punishment. Additionally, I was teased a lot for my looks by my family, my friends, and I was bullied in school because I am quite short. You can't see on the video, but I'm not average height. I'm quite short, and I'm dark skinned, and the list goes on for the things I was teased for. And the trauma that I was experiencing at home caused me to suck my thumb because when I got educated on that, I realized that is how children who grow up in trauma that they don't know how to deal with end up self-soothing. So I ended up sucking my thumb, which also got me bullied at school because I didn't know how to regulate myself without my thumb. So I got bullied. So anyways, and then I grew into my teen years. When I went to high school, I decided I don't need people. I'm not gonna have friends. And I built a wall, essentially. I decided I don't want friends. I don't want anyone because I'm clearly the problem. So that brought on a lot of loneliness and a lot of anger also, and resentment, because as much as I may have caused the problems in my teens, I felt I was the problem. So the problem must remove itself from everyone else who's not the problem, right? So I removed myself from my cousins, and I did withdraw from my mother as well. I stopped speaking about a lot of things that were happening, the bullying and all of that. And additionally, I became aggressive. So I built a defense for myself and decided, you know what, nobody's gonna come at me. So I became extremely rude and extremely aggressive, and I picked fights and all of that as a means to say, stay away from me. I'm a problem. If you come to me, I'm gonna fight you, and that's that. So I grew up I grew into that in my teens, and that's how I survived high school, because indeed I didn't have friends, and I was in a very lonely place. So in addition to being a very lonely child who was locked in a lot of the times, not allowed to play with others, my mom would say, I'm a bad influence, so I'm gonna influence all of her other children. So I wasn't allowed to socialize with them a lot. So I think they suffered the trauma also, because we would have to organize like stolen sessions of comfort. And if I were, for example, I remember a situation where I was menstruating, but I didn't have underwear and I didn't have sanitary pads. So I had to ask my sister to ask my mom, except my sister was smaller than me. She had a smaller body, and she had to ask for panties and sanitary pads, and I had to make a plan to make them fit. So I think they also suffered from that trauma, but I also suffered from that trauma. And then I lived in that pain. So I didn't know then, obviously there wasn't a term in my mind for it then. I couldn't say I was a depressed child, or I know now that I was depressed, but at the time I didn't know I was depressed. So that is basically, when I analyze it now, you obviously using therapy, it's where it started, it's how it started, and I took it into my life. Yeah.
And now, with where you are now, being able to talk about it, and you have mentioned that you sought out help in the form of therapy. Perhaps if I can ask, how are your relationships now with your siblings and with your mom?
I will start with my relationship with me. So I think what changed me and my relationship with myself is having children. And I had my first child, and this is so emotional for me. And I looked at him and I thought, I cannot raise this child angry. It is not his fault. I cannot raise him angry. I had to figure out how to get rid of the pain so that I don't pass it on. Because I figured my mom probably had her own pains.
Yeah.
And that she didn't deal with. And she passed them on to me. And I decided I'm not going to be that parent. I am not going to be angry at my child. I was angry at myself, but I decided I need to stop being angry at myself because I'm going to be angry at my child. So that's when at the time, I didn't have the facilities. In a sense, I didn't have medical aid or the money to seek out help. So what I did is I started Googling a lot. So I Googled the things that I would think about or the things that I was feeling. I would Google literally, why am I so angry? How not to become angry? You know, and I took the steps. If they said meditate, I would meditate. If they said journal, I would journal. And I put that into action. And it started with little things of deciding that I am good enough. And it didn't matter if I wasn't good enough for you, but I had to learn that I'm good enough for me. And I'm good enough for my son, because I needed to believe that I'm good enough for him so that I can raise him well. So I first started by forgiving my inner child because she survived. And I was angry at her because I felt like she wasn't me. Up until I was in therapy, I felt like she wasn't me. And when my therapist, you know, in therapy, they ask you to start as far back as you can. And I would refuse. I'm like, no, that's not relevant, because that child and me, we're not the same person. I'm struggling right now with a certain thing and I need help right now. I'm not her. So we need to start where I am and fix me now. And the therapist got me to say, no, but we need to start there. And I had to go back and fetch that little girl and realize that she survived. She survived and she made it, and she is me and I am her. So when that relationship improved, I gained a little bit more confidence in myself. I struggled through school, obviously, because I didn't ask for help. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know who to ask for help. So even when I was struggling with my books, I knew I only had myself. And because I didn't make friends, I couldn't even ask my friends. So I struggled through school. So that put a dent on my self-esteem as well. With my sisters, one being an auditor, one being an engineer, me after high school, not knowing where I was going or what I wanted to do, because I was struggling through school and I felt like I didn't want to go to school, and my mom not being happy, feeling like, why you not like your sisters? It was a lot. So I worked on that relationship with myself first to say, you are not like your sisters because you are not your sisters. And they want to be engineers and they want to be auditors, but you don't, because it's not your thing. And I had to convince myself of that. And when I did that, I started to look for people who I felt looked like me or felt like me or acted like me, or, you know, I looked for anything that I can hold on to as a means of survival, as a means of reference. So I looked for sources of support, and I found, you know, the internet is a beautiful place. I found a lot of people that have come out from places like me and have gone to be great. And that was my motivation. And I thought, you know what, I can be a great mother. And then I took it from there. And then when I eventually got medical aid, I got into therapy. And my therapist taught me how to forgive myself, because I was more angry at myself than I was at anyone else. I felt I was beaten because I deserved it. Because why was I so difficult? Because why couldn't I just listen? Why couldn't I just abide? Why couldn't I not ask questions? And why wasn't I pretty? Why was I so fat? Because I was very chubby, and I still am, but I was chubby. I was angry. Why aren't I like my sisters? But I worked on that. And my relationship with my mother is struggling. My relationship with my sisters is amazing. We we are all, like I said, in a process of finding some sort of healing.
Yes.
Because as much as I was the one that suffered physically, I think mentally we all suffered, and we all had to have each other's backs. And I had a lot of guilt because I was looked, they took care of me. I felt more than I took care of them. And I had a lot of guilt about that. I felt like I was a burden. And at a point I tried to distance myself from them. In my mind, I thought I was relieving them from myself. I was releasing them so that they can be who they need to be. Yeah. And then without my burden. And my mother and I, we are working on a relationship, because in therapy they call us to sit together and talk. And it was a difficult journey, because imagine telling a Black mother, I have depression because of you. Imagine I have depression because I was locked up. I was depression because I was beat up. I have depression because you used to laugh at how I look. I have depression because of that. It was hard, and I thought I couldn't do it. And I thought she wouldn't be accepting of that. And because when I was growing up, I would constantly try to bring up these conversations, and she'd be like, there you go again with your drama. Why can't you just be, But we have worked through that, and we are not friends, but we are at a good place. We do talk here and there. But my sisters are still my best friends. We still like fights like a badge. So it's for me that I had to let go of the shame, because even going to therapy, I was told by my sisters, and I thought, no, it's not right, because that means I'm mentally ill. That means, I can't manage myself. I can't regulate myself. I was ashamed. I really was. But then I rid myself of that shame, and I got the help that I needed.
Yeah. And, I don't want to speed through the conversation, because I think it's easy for us when we're having these conversations and we're thinking, okay, we've got this time from like 6 to 7, but I really don't want to speed through what you are sharing with us right now, Lethabo, because it is so much vulnerability. It is so much strength in being able to, because I think in most cases we want to share our stories when we are at the end of it, to be like, oh guys, I went through that, and then I did this, and then I did this, but to still be in a place where you can be like, actually, it's not great. I'm still working through it. My relationships with people are still raw, and they are still open wounds, and I'm still processing. It takes more strength to be talking about it when you're still going through it. But it's strength nonetheless. And one of the things that for me that struck a chord, Lethabo, is when you spoke about, how you were as a child. You were outspoken. You asked questions, and you wanted to know why. And I think it struck a chord with me because I could relate. I can relate. Because myself, I always felt like I'm the black sheep of the family, because I am daring. I always, if you tell me don't do it, the back of my mind is like, but why? Like, why? I want to know, I want to try it. I want to explore. I always say that I've made my parents' life colorful. I've always done things that are out of the box that they don't expect. And so when you spoke about that, I just wanted to reflect on that, because as a mother, as you have said, who's raising, a son, I don't know how many kids you have right now, but you are
two boys.
You've got 2 boys, you are raising your kids. And so for me, it's also knowing how I am. It's allowing my kids then to ask questions, to be curious, to be daring. You get what I mean? Because in most cases, like you mentioned, in our Black community, there is what is normal. And normal is don't ask questions, do as you're told. In most cases, is children should not be seen or heard. Just be there, just be a child and do what you're told. And so I once came across a friend of mine who posted about her nephew, and she was talking about how the child was so outspoken, and she said, you know, I know everybody says you are defiant, everybody says you're difficult, but for me, I see you as somebody who can be the greatest, you know, spokesperson, or the person that is always defending people, the person who is always, you know, breaking boundaries, because we need people like that in our world. And so I think it speaks to us as parents to say, each of our children is different, and we need to be invested in getting to know them, and not see that, you know, that hyperactive child as just hyperactive. There is so much that can come out of, you know, being hyperactive. They could be artistic, you know, they could be poetic. We don't know what lies behind that. And so, like I was saying to what you're saying, that really did strike a chord with me. But just to move on with the conversation, Lethabo, what would your advice be? You having, you know, visited the little child, you having to go fetch that child. Most of us are not going to therapy or can't afford therapy or whatever the case might be. But what has been the benefit of coming face to face with your past? Because a lot of us, like you, just want to be like, look, it happened, let's move on. But what are the benefits of confronting the pain, confronting the past, confronting what really hurt you? What would you say are the benefits of that, and how would you advise somebody else?
I would say, in all honesty, I am still learning the full benefits of it, because I will tell you what I was told the benefits were and what I have seen the benefits be. My therapist told me that it was important that I go back there to see who I was, because chances are I am depressed because I lost myself on the way, because I changed myself because of the situation I was in. And if I am able to go back for that girl, then I will be able to reconcile with her and truly become me. Because I'm living in a vase, essentially. I know I'm a vase, the vase is empty. So I need to go fetch the contents of the vase and put it inside so the flower can bloom. Is how it was explained to me. And I will tell you, it was my experience, because I was angry at her, like I said, not realizing she's me. I'm angry at me. I'm angry at me today. In my head, I thought I'm angry at her. She failed me. She failed us. And I had a failing career up until then, or what I deemed a failing life up until then, because I couldn't keep a job, and I was depressed and sleeping through my days. And sometimes I'd sleep for continuous months. And I felt it's because of her that she got herself used to sleeping, that now I cannot cope through life. But when I brought the two together, I realized that she is me and I am her. And bringing us back together made me resurrect her and rethink her reasoning. So it put me in a place where I put myself in that scenario. So what would happen is I would think of the most traumatic days that I didn't want to think about ever in my days, because it was just too much. And I thought about it point by point by point. And it got me to a point of realization of the resilience of that girl. I looked at her and thought, I went through that and I am here. I realized that girl was actually so resilient because she made it through that. And that made me realize that means I'm resilient. That means I can fight this depression. That means that I can get out of this depression because I got out of that situation. I looked at instances where for instance, my mom used to say the reason why she used to beat me is because I never cried at the first stroke. She would strike me, and then I would ask her, "Are you done?" And then she would get angry and then continue to strike me. And then I would reflect on those days and realize that was me trying to tell her I will stand up for myself. And most of the times I would ask her, "What did I do? You can't just beat me. What did I do?" And when I play these things back, I realize I was standing up for myself. I wasn't doing anything wrong. And I lost that when I left her. That's when I let all the bullying come in. And because I lost that person that used to be resilient and used to stand up for herself and used to speak up for herself. So when I reconciled the two and found forgiveness, first of all, anger and hatred, self-hatred is an anchor. It's an anchor. It's something you hold on to, or that holds you down so much without you noticing. The minute I let that go and I brought her back and held her hand, I was even able to look at situations that I'm in as an adult and think, what would I have done as a kid? What would I have done? What would I have said? How would I have handled this? And sometimes I will tell someone a story about myself as a child. And when I tell them a problem that I have now, and then they would remind me of that story, but that doesn't sound like the child that you are. You wouldn't have handled that this way. You wouldn't have cried. You would have figured out a way, and you would have, if it's painful, you would have cried it out later, but you wouldn't spend months in bed because you made it out. So I would advise people to face yourself, to face your past, because you don't have to bring it with you, because bringing it with you means bringing the pain back and holding on to that, and that is not advisable, I think. But to some point, you have to bring back the pain and heal it, because pain cannot be buried. You cannot decide, I'm going to bury it and it doesn't exist. It has to be healed. Depression and emotional pain is like physical pain. If your limb was cut off right now and you decided you're gonna, for example, wrap it in a t-shirt and leave it like that, it will get septic. It will get worse. Your whole arm will end up getting infected. Pain emotionally is the same way. You need to address it. You need to address it. You need to heal it, and then you can move on. So avoiding the pain that you went through in the past is not going to help. So if it means having a conversation with a child like you, a child like yourself, which is what I did, I had a conversation with me in writing, telling her, I am sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I forgive you. And recognizing that the pain the child, the inner child or the younger child felt is my pain. I cannot dismiss it. It is my pain. Once I was able to get to a place to reconcile the two, then I was able to heal it and move on. I think that's the advice that I can give someone. Though it's just like your limb. You cannot cover it with a shirt and hope it will go away, because that's not how it works.
And even to what you're saying also, Lethabo, what I am also getting from that is we often look at our past so much more on the negative, but you're offering a different perspective to say, if you reflect on perhaps the abuse you encountered, the disappointment, the hurt, if you look at that, but you see the fact that that child, that was you, has made it here, which means there is so much strength. And if you had strength at that age and now you are older, what more strength do you have now? Because now you can actually speak up even more. You can be stronger and braver than you were as a child. And so for me, it's a moment to say, let me revisit, not for the sake of, just holding on to the pain or wanting to, poke at the pain, but rather to also thank myself, to say, you know what, you could have given up. You could have let go. You could have become everything they said you were when they called you names, and they made, they made conclusions about who you were going to become, who you were going to amount to. But look at where you are now.
Yeah.
Like, look at where you are now. You are at a place where you are speaking about it. You are creating spaces where you are the person to somebody else that you wish you had. Like, it's also a moment to say thank you for surviving that. Thank
Yeah.
you for holding on. Thank you for reminding me who I really am, because we forget ourselves in the process of it all, because we convince ourselves, look, I'm an adult, I should just be this, I should just be that. I'm gonna take a quick moment, Lethabo, not to take away from your
No
conversation,
problem.
but literally, sure. Literally yesterday during our Bible study, we were reading in the book of Matthew. And it's the scripture where Jesus, the children were brought to Jesus. And, the disciple tried to shoo away the kids, to be like, no, this is Jesus. He's too busy of a man. He doesn't have time for the little kids. And his response was, no, let the children come unto me. For the kingdom of God is for people like these. It's for people who are like these children, because these children, they know exactly who they are. They know
Yeah.
exactly who they are. They are so headstrong on who they want to become. Literally, a child can be like, me, I want to be a DJ. They don't care
Yeah.
what you think about what about being a, they don't care. They're just like, me, I'm gonna be a DJ. Me, mom,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make money. I'm gonna buy you a house. And so there is so much we can learn from being a child. They are not consumed by the worries of this world. They forgive ever so easily. You get what I mean? Like, as a parent,
Yeah.
you shout at your child now, 2 minutes later they are back. They're like, oh mommy, you know how my day was. Like, and so when you speak of revisiting your child, I'm reminded of, our Bible study yesterday, because I'm like, if I can go back and revisit that child, I can say, wow, man, you were brave. You had
Yeah.
dreams. You had aspirations. Let's get back to that. We know more than what
Yeah.
we knew then. We know more people than who we knew then. Let's get back to that. Let's find our joy once again. Let's find the wonder in our
Definitely.
eyes once again. And so, man, you are dropping gems. You are dropping gems. And I believe, that the people that are tuning in are also, getting something from us. So I'm just going to take a moment, Lethabo, to just acknowledge some of the people that we do have on the session today. So you are welcome, Antoinette. You're welcome, Clarinet. David Musonda, you're welcome, Dike Lady. It's always wonderful to have you. Holiness, thank you for joining. Xoliswa, it's beautiful to have you here. We are speaking on mental health, and we are speaking about the journey. Today we are in the journey. We are not in the aftermath. We are in the journey and in the process. And the process looks beautiful, Lethabo, I have to say. It looks
Thank you.
beautiful to me. And so you spoke about forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself. A lot of us are carrying and living our adult life, but we
Sorry.
can't even sorry?
Sorry, that was my dog making noise.
Oh, okay, no, that's okay. But we can't forgive ourselves even for the mistake we made yesterday. I will speak to just when you have conditioned yourself, right, to be like, no, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, or I said I'm gonna create boundaries, I'm not gonna let that ex call me anymore, I'm not gonna do that again, and then you find yourself doing it again, and then you can't forgive yourself for that, because you too have convinced yourself that that's who you are. You always make mistakes. You're not smart enough. You're not capable.
Yeah.
And so even as we get into the conversation, I'm going to open it up to everybody else. You're welcome to raise your hands right now, guys, if you've got questions for Lethabo, if you've got contributions, if you want to share your story as well, you're more than welcome to do so. But forgiving one's self. I want us to speak just a little bit into that, to say also, what have you seen to be the benefits? You spoke about, the anger being an anchor, and I take it, forgiveness has benefits, forgiving yourself, being able to show yourself grace. What has been your experience with that?
My experience with that was actually finding my own relationship with God. And as I was going on both the journey of mental health and growing myself as a Christian, I came across a scripture that said, I, the Lord, will forgive whom I will forgive, but it is required of you to forgive all men. And I thought of it, and I realized that God is actually talking about me also, that he's the one who's going to decide if he's not going to forgive me or not. But I can't decide to not forgive me. So it is his commandment that I must forgive myself, because whether I'm forgiven on his part or not, it's going to be for him. And this one came in my later years when I became a teenager and I didn't wait for marriage, if you know what I mean. Yes. And then, yeah, I didn't wait for marriage, which compounded on my problems, on my mental problems of you're the problem. You're the problem. You see, you're the problem. You couldn't even wait, because I grew up in a Christian home also. So I carried a lot of shame because of it, because I couldn't tell anyone, first of all, because who was I going to tell? My Christian sisters, my Christian mothers, my Christian friends? No, I don't think so. So it was a thing inside of me. And when I decided to fix that, I thought, but God will never forgive me. It's unforgivable. It's done. I'm Satan's child now. And then when I embarked on the journey of me being a Christian woman, and I bumped into that scripture, I realized that God wanted me to forgive myself. And as much as I put it in the context of I didn't wait, but I also realized I needed to forgive my inner child as well. And I've carried it with me every day. And I've allowed myself, I think it freed me, because I became less scared, because I was always so scared of making mistakes, because I was the black sheep of the family. I wanted to be perfect in the eyes of God, in the eyes of my mother. And I was like I said, I locked everybody out so that I can make sure that I'm not a problem. So when I decided to forgive myself, I freed myself and was able to be me. So I forgave myself for hating myself. I forgave myself for not always being able to do what God commands me to do. And I forgave myself. Sometimes I do find myself angry, and I'm still in therapy now, because I'm not perfect. I'm not healed. I'm not speaking because I'm perfect and everything is fine. No, I'm not. But I do find myself sometimes in situations where I lost it and I'm just not who I set out to be. But because I decided then I'm going to forgive myself, I'm able to forgive myself every day as I make those little mistakes, and then I pick up the pieces. But that has also allowed me to make mistakes and learn, and that is how I was able to reconcile myself with who I was and build my character, because I wasn't so scared anymore. I was just going at it because I believed I'm fine. God is going to decide if he's going to forgive me if I make a mistake, but I am going to try. I'm going to try. If it happens to be wrong.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And it's what you say about, I don't have a choice but to forgive myself. For me, that that
for me, yes.
And so I see Dike Lady has her hand up. Thank you so much, Dike Lady, and you're welcome. Please do unmute your mic and let's hear from you. Dike Lady.
Hi, Jedidah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for
Hi.
giving me the opportunity to speak. So I don't have a question, but I have a contribution. Lethabo, thank you for sharing your story, and I want to applaud you for taking that step. You know, it's in being vulnerable where you find strength, where you find power, where you find healing. When you are too scared to be vulnerable, or when you have that fear of being vulnerable, that's when you find yourself in shame. But in you, you know, finding courage to face all of this, you find power. Like in everything that you go through, there's a lesson to be learned. So I want to speak life to you, that healing is your portion. Yes, you are still you're still inside the journey, but you will make it to the end. And your mom will find healing through you. Your name suggests joy. You are going to bring joy back into your family. That's exactly what you're going to bring. It might be hard, but that is why you have to go through this process. This whole process for you, once you reach, you know, the goal of you healing and being in a state of mind where you are not worried about this and that anymore, where you can share the story without you breaking down because you have found strength and power in this. That's where your mom will find power as well, because maybe she was struggling as well to deal with her issues. And now, in seeing you tackling these things and you being brave enough to take the step to say, actually, this was not okay, and this has destroyed me in this way, and this is the steps that I'm taking in healing myself, she will be brave enough as well to tackle whatever issues that she was facing that caused her to be the way that she is. There's always a positive in the negative. Look at how you're raising your kids now. You know better. You know how not to treat your kids. You know how to love your kids better. And you are learning to love yourself as well. Because it's in all these things that are happening where you rediscover yourself. So I want to applaud you for reintroducing yourself to yourself and knowing that when you bury this child, you're not helping yourself, because the child that you're bearing, it is like a seed. It is not going to be destroyed, or, you know, because you covered it and you think it's gone. It is not, but like a seed, it's going to grow and it becomes this big thing. And that's why now, you know, it's affecting your mental health. But now it's in you going back to that child, going back to the roots, to discover what happened and what is it that caused you to feel this way and to act the way that you're acting. And in dealing with that, where you find strength, and you know, you are now in a position to even help other people. I mean, look at the platform where you're in right now. There might be somebody that also went through something like that, but they're not brave enough to face the parents. Because, you know, how do you face a parent and say, you know, you beating me up was not okay. You beating me up, it caused me to be this way. It is not an easy thing, but you being brave enough to actually face it and say, you know what, yes, it might not be easy. Yes, our relationship is not the way that I want it to be, but one step at a time. So celebrate all the small wins. Once you're able to see that this was the problem, celebrate that, even though you're not where you want to be. The moment that, you know, there's a bigger picture now, you have reached your goal, you will see all the small steps, you know, and the building blocks that it has created. So that's all that I want to share today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Lady.
DK Lady, for that. And you know, to what DK Lady is saying, Lethabo, you are a cycle breaker. Literally, you are a cycle breaker, because you decided to say the hurt and the point and the sorry, I'm now reading the message that I got here, but the hurt and the pain, it stops with me. You know, the not knowing what to do with your hurt from your childhood and then inflicting that on your kids, it stops with me. So thank you so much, DK Lady, for your contribution. I'm also just going to quickly just point out to a couple of people just to share, you know, what has been your takeaway, what has encouraged you, and you know, what is it that you will be taking away from this conversation for not more than a minute. I will kindly ask, let's see, Koliswa, are you available to unmute your mic for us and just share with us what will your takeaway be from, you know, Lethabo's share today?
Hi sis, I'm busy here with
Hi.
bath time over here, so I think my son might just make a bit of noise. There he goes. Okay, but anyway, I like how it's challenging me as well to think about my. I think the last time I also shared about this, that there's a need for one to really take that time to look back, instead of just looking at what's happening now. I mean, she mentioned stuff like maybe I'm just a problem child. It was Lethabo mentioned that she was angry at herself, like, why did you let that happen? Why did you do that? You know, but and to me, it just shows that some things you tell yourself that you are the problem, but you just need to find out where did it go wrong? What could it be that might have led to where you are? It's not that you're the problem. It's that something might have happened to disturb your peace. So yeah, I'm really inspired by her story and about forgiving yourself. And it really affects even our relationship with God, because we think God as this person who just wants to punish us for the things that we did wrong. We start having like a toxic relationship with God. So yeah, I'm really learning a lot about forgiving oneself. And God will always welcome you. God will always forgive you. I mean, He says it in His word. So forgive you. So if God for me, who am I to hold it on me? Why should I be? I lost it yesterday. Yes, I lost it yesterday, but today I can do better. That's what I'm taking.
Thank you so much, Kolisa, for your contribution. I see Pro Positive, one of our host, my co-host rather, has got her hand up. Please do unmute your mic and let's hear you.
Oh, thank you so much. Like, this conversation is so powerful. Thank you so much, Lethabo, for coming through and sharing your story. Sometimes we think we just are sitting, spending an hour, but sometimes we don't see the move that is currently happening at this moment. We think it will be fair to say that we'd like you to just go back, maybe send this video to you so that you can look at it and how you are even brave to even come out and speak about it to strangers. Actually, we just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for coming through. At this moment right now, I think a lot of us got to reflect and to relate into your story in any way that we can, because we are all just like you. We are all the same. You understand? We've all been through, raised in a black home, and somehow we get to realize that as people we are evolving, and so as the generation we are at the space that our parents were not. You get to a space. I want to speak basically on the fact that you were speaking about learning to forgive yourself, and also for the people that hurt you. At the end of the day, you mentioned something very sensitive, which is the relationship between a child and a mother, or a daughter, or a child and a parent, basically. That is something that we get to understand as you grow older, that my parents might have had issues, but there was never internet for them to go in and say what is wrong with me. And they also had to carry things. You find that our parents can stand and say, I will never forgive that person, because you don't even want it. They don't even want to talk about it. But we are at the space where we are able to talk about it. So this is something that I just got when I was thinking that this is a move for us to say that now we get to understand it, so that our children, when they go through it, we tell them that we know that there's going to be times where you think you're not good enough, but you are unique. There's nobody in the world like you. You are beautiful. We have never had that opportunity for someone to come and say, we are beautiful, we are loved, we are good enough, and we can never be like anybody. God made us all so different, but yet like Him. I said, let's make man in our image. We are all so beautiful, all so different. We all have our strengths. Yes, we had challenges, but at the same time, we look like Him at all of our uniqueness, So it is a matter of saying that now, because there is understanding, then we get to use and this information that is given to us into growth and evolving and becoming better. I think that was my contribution. that you are evolving. You are in a space where you are saying, I'm breaking the cycle, I'm breaking it in my family, I'm breaking it in me, I'm forgiving myself. I'm not gonna make the same mistakes because I am wiser. You just got me pumped, girl. But I love. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming through, and everybody. Thank you so much for coming through. Thank you so much, JD, for everything. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm not enough for this session.
So we are at 7 o'clock, but I want to give one last person an opportunity to share, and then we will just ask Lethabo to just close and give us her closing remarks for today. If Munene is able, Munene, please do unmute your mic and let's hear from you. What is your takeaway, from today's conversation for not more than a minute? Please, let's hear you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So on my side, it's also feeding time and whatever. So I hope my son will allow me to speak for a little bit. Actually, what I had in mind might take longer than a minute, but I'll try and keep it short. But so there was a lot of takeaway for me from what Lethabo was speaking about. But I think the one thing that stuck was about the behavior of children, because sometimes you see children acting out and immediately it's like, hey, when that child becomes that one that you always be like, hey, whenever they start acting out, you immediately become irritated. You immediately become like, yeah, when now you have a problem, that child, you almost stigmatize that child's behavior, and they become their behavior. When you see them, you see the behavior. And it's something that as Black parents, we need to really, really, really think about how we deal with kids' behavior. When you see a child's behavior, we really, really need to start asking ourselves, why is that child behaving like that? What is it that is making them behave like that? And how can I help them? Because there's a lot that children cannot verbalize. And if we as their parents do not find ways to help them, they're going to grow up with a lot of issues which we could have helped them with. As the people who are here to guide them, we owe it to ourselves and to them to I know many of us don't have the tools, but we owe it to them and ourselves to find the tools to help our children, especially in the age of now, where we know resources are there. Like Lethabo was saying, there's a lot of information on the web. There's a lot of YouTube, this and that. There's guidance that is available. If we just search and we try and figure out, my child is acting like this, you could see, you might find it could be this, it could be this, and you might find ways to explore with your child how to help them. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your contribution, Monene. We appreciate you for joining us this evening. And to just what you're saying, I was at a baby shower over the weekend, and the thing the preacher was speaking into was, if your child was to act like you, how would you respond to that? And so if you reflect on how you grew up and the things that you needed, the help that you needed, the person that you needed, that will give you exactly who you need to be for your kids, that help, that voice, that safe space. And so thank you so much, Monene, once again for your contribution. Lethabo, I will give you a minute. Please do give us your closing remarks for the day.
In closing, I just wanted to say, I've learned that you cannot do it alone. Spaces like this very one is very important. And like I said, I think my biggest mistake was isolation. And as soon as I passed the isolation phase, I was able to find healing, because I realized I wasn't alone. Because when I was eventually able to tell someone, and although our struggle wasn't the same, but the core of it was the same, which is depression and anxiety. Because what happens to us, where some people develop depression and anxiety, baby, please go back. Sorry, my son is. when some of us developed it in our childhood, right? Depression, and some of us, it happened in our adulthood, whether it was a divorce or you lost your job unexpectedly or lost someone you loved, a child, a mother, or whoever, and you suddenly developed that depression. And the human instinct is to withdraw because I don't want to be a burden, or at least in the Black community, withdraw because I don't want to be a burden. I can figure this out. I can do this. I'm in Bogodo. And I just want to speak to that it is a big mistake, because as much as Jedidah is going through a different thing from what I am going through, when I'm suffering from depression and anxiety, and she can tell me, I usually run to cure. So I learned to run because I learned from someone else who was going through depression and anxiety, who said to me, I run when I feel most anxious because I find it clear in my head. And she did not go through childhood trauma. She grew up in a very healthy home, but she got affected in her marriage. So my thing is, don't try to do it alone. Number one, God, because God, I believe God healed me to the point that I am. And like I said, I'm not completely healed, but I am healed, because previously the shame of saying that I was bullied, I would never say that. I would never say half of the things I was able to say here because I was ashamed. And I was scared, because I was scared. What if my mother ends up hating me? What if she feels like, and then she disowns me and I cannot say anything? I got rid of the fear because I spoke to someone and said, and they made me realize, even if they end up hating you, you will be free. And speaking about it, I learned to heal myself. I learned like people will give you referrals of something to read, a scripture, a quote, speak about it. Tell someone, because depression is a virus that will eat you alive if you are quiet. Speak about it, and you will get the help that you need to. And it doesn't need to be a therapy. I am 33. I've only been in therapy for 1 year. 32 years, I was not 32 years, let's say about 10 years, I've been self-helping. Google, people, and any other support that I could use. And only 1 year ago, I was able to afford therapy. But my takeaway was, my biggest mistake in all of those years was the isolation. Don't do it.
So thank you so much, Lethabo, for your time. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your words of encouragement. Thank you for sharing your light with us. There is so much we can take away from this. You know, like you said, whether you are depressed or it's just anxiety, or you just want to learn skills to help your child who might be going through it cope. Either way, we are all, you know, doing it together. And so that's, like you said, this is why these spaces should exist and continue to exist, so that people don't have to live in isolation. So yeah, no, thank you so much. Yes.
One more thing, guys. We do not have the same mental illness, né? So don't take blanket approach advices, because I may be suffering from bipolar and you may be suffering from ADHD or any other thing. There's no blanket approach. So like I said, what saved my life was education. At first, that was my starting point, education. So let's just keep that in mind. Education, God, and forgiveness.
Come on, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you and we love you, and may God continue to keep you and watch over you and give you strength. Do have a wonderful evening, everybody, and we will see you again next week, and goodbye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night to everybody. Thank you for coming.